Morning everyone and welcome to Mindspeak. Morning everyone and welcome to Mindspeak. We're going to start today with the playing of the East African Community National Anthem, which I have not heard yet, so I'm excited to hear it. So if I can ask you all to be upstanding. You know, I was thinking about today and about the Secretary General, and I think of one thing I can say, that we're all East Africans. So I'm really excited to be hosting His Excellency, the Secretary General, for the second time. And I'll just give you a brief introduction to the Secretary General and then the EAC, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Sezibera. Dr. Sezibera is a Rwandan physician, a politician, a diplomat, a civil servant. He's the current Secretary General of the EAC. He was appointed to that position by the EAC heads of state on the 19th of April 2011 for a 5-year term. And I went back to read Dr. Sezibera's acceptance speech. And in it he said, "I'm very proud and I feel very courageous to be serving East Africans." And I really thought that was a wonderful thing to say. Dr. Sezibera received his early education in Burundi. In 1984, he entered Makerere University Medical School, obtained a degree, Master of Arts in Liberal Studies from Georgetown University in the US, graduated from Makerere, joined the RPF as a field medical officer, rose to the rank of major within the RPF. In July 94, was appointed physician to the President of the Republic of Rwanda, concurrently served as a military aide to the President of Rwanda as well. 1995, became a member of Parliament, and then subsequently, in 1999, appointed Ambassador of Rwanda to the United States of America, with concurrent accreditation to Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil. Appointed to the Minister of Health in the Rwandan cabinet, a position he held until he was appointed the East African Secretary General. So as you can see, that is what I define as a monster CV. You can't argue with that. I was thinking about what to say when I was introducing the Secretary General. And first of all, the EAC has gained real momentum under his leadership. And I think in particular, it's what Malcolm Gladwell likes to call an outlier when it comes at looking at intra-EAC trade, when you compare it to any other grouping in Africa, to COMESA, to SADC. We have the highest intra-EAC trade. Of course, we all want to see more, but it is a serious achievement. And I think best of all, quite often when people talk about the East African community, it becomes so emotional and so noisy. And Dr. Sezibera is like a very still, rational voice in that entire debate. When people are losing their emotions, I look for what Dr. Sezibera is saying. The EAC, by the way, the second fastest growing region in the world after ASEAN. So, we're on the road, we're hoping to change gears, but we're in a good place, I think. And the remark I remember best of all from Dr. Sezibera was last time when he said, look, this is Africa's century if you want it. And I think you said otherwise other people will want it more. But Your Excellency, we want it. These are the people that we want to unleash across the EAC as our infantry, entrepreneurial infantry. I think it's our young people who are going to reap the rewards of what you are trying to achieve, and I hope everything that you're seeking to achieve will be done. I think there's a great potential bonanza of oil and gas. I sincerely hope we manage that well. If you look at East Africa, the amount of oil and gas they're finding is really nearly equivalent to what was found a long, long time ago in the Middle East, in my opinion. And finally, just before I turn over to the Secretary General, as I was saying, Mindspeak has given me so much faith in the ability of our people. I look out at my audience and I can see so much talent, people trying to succeed, and this is the elixir, I think, of our community, is our young people and their ambition to succeed. And I think there is no better choice of leader we have for our community than Dr. Sezibera at this moment. Dr. Sezibera, can I turn it over to you?
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning. I think there is no better place I would have wished to be than here this morning to have a bit of a conversation with you about the East African community, but most importantly about what we are trying to do together as East Africans. But I wanted to begin by asking you to reflect on the song, the anthem we've just sung. You have it. It says, it begins with, E Mungu, twaomba uilinde jumuiya yetu, jumuiya ya Afrika Mashariki. Anthems are a reflection of a people's beliefs. And if you look at the anthem for the European Union, they went and picked Beethoven's 9th Symphony, I believe, and turned it into their anthem. Well, you can argue that they were trying to celebrate man's ingenuity. And you can see it in the values of the European Union, and it's focused on their own and what their people can do. When you come to ours, it begins with E Mungu. And that, I think, is a reflection of our values as a community also. That we are a people who like to see themselves as a people of God. Irrespective of whichever country you come from. I think if you come from Kenya, the Kenyan anthem is all about God. The Ugandan anthem is the same. The Rwandese, the same. Burundi, a little bit like that. So we are a people, we are a jumuiya anchored in God, but also celebrating our unity. And I think that is the anthem that we sing about. So it's about our beliefs as a people. It's about our unity as a community. That's what the anthem says. And then it talks about we getting together and working hard for our prosperity. You read it in there, it says tufanye kazi sote kwa makini. Yeah? Tujitowe kwa hali na mali. It's about, yes, we are people who believe in God, but we also are a people who should be working hard to get our future in the world. So that is, when I talk to people about the East African community, that's where I begin from. And then the second is to say, why? I think you've read in the papers some time back, some East Africans who don't think that East African community, East African unity is important. But I wanted to project, I'll show you this map, I take no credit for it. What I've tried to do is put the rest of the world and fit it into Africa. And you actually can fit the rest of the world into Africa. That means if you see, this is the United States. If you go to the whole United States, it sits very well into Africa. Then you can put in China if you want. This is China. Put the US in the middle. Could put China at the top of Africa. I put the European Union, you can fit Europe. This is the whole of Europe. In here, fits. India, I put them next to the Indian Ocean. But you can fit India there. I have Mexico, so I was trying to fit the rest of the world into continent. There is a bit of Mexico in there. And of course, you can put Japan right here. So, this continent of ours, you can fit all the major economies into Africa. But then, what are the figures? What do the figures look like? The whole of our continent contributes only 2% to world GDP, 2%. And it contributes 3% to world trade, 2% to world GDP, 3% to world trade. By comparison, China, which can fit into northern Africa, contributes 10% to world GDP and 11% to world trade. The United States, 21% to world GDP and 11% to international trade. India, if you scale it a little bit, this is the comparison between Africa and India, right there. And India is 3% of world GDP, 2% of world trade. Almost the same as the whole of Africa. And so what is the problem? That this continent of ours, with immense natural resources, a population of over almost 1 billion people, is contributing only 3% to world trade. There are many reasons, and I won't go into them. I'll just fix on one. The biggest is that we have 54 small economies. We are not one economy. We have 54 small, fragmented economies. And therefore, it doesn't make sense that the cost of doing business is high. You can imagine if you're going to set up a factory for the African continent, you have to look for 54 licenses, 54 visa applications, 54 yellow fever certificates, 50, name it. So the cost of doing business becomes extremely high. But even worse, of the 54 economies, there is no linkage between them. If you look at our road infrastructure systems, they were built to take our goods and people outside Africa. So the rail that we have here, the rail, you know the rail line which was built in East Africa came from Mombasa, it was going to Kasese in Uganda. The aim was to take copper, Ugandan copper, to the UK. That's why nobody thought of moving that rail from Kasese down to Kigali. It's only now that we are planning to do that. So all our infrastructure was meant to move goods and people out of Africa into Europe. So that's what we are trying to do. This is what we are trying to correct as East Africa. We cannot correct it necessarily on the African continent, but certainly for East Africa, it's possible to have these 5 economies together. That's what we are doing. That's the rationale for East African integration. Now, East Africa has grown very fast. As Arikan has said, one of the fastest growing regions in the world. Our country is among the fastest growing economies in the world, even without oil. Maternal mortality is down, infant mortality is down, education levels are up, investments in infrastructure are up, our economies are growing and growing fast. So we've done well, we are doing very well. But put that into context also. Our GDP is currently about 84 billion. And we are still a very, very small economy. All of us collectively are still smaller than the economy of Angola. Angola in the, all of us together are still smaller than Angola. So to you colleagues, when you hear people say, we can't get together because there is a big economy called Kenya, and there is a small one called Burundi, they don't know what they're talking about. Kenya is a very, very small economy. Extremely small by any standard. In my language, shoes are called urukweto, huh? Ikirato. The people in Burundi call it kirato. Now that's what they call a shoe. But kirato can also mean something which is proud. It's pride. Because our people were not wearing shoes. If you put on shoes, they called it a kirato. You are boasting. Kurata. That's the, kwirata, kurata, somebody who is proud. So the shoe became a sign of pride. And of course, when I was going to school, those who wore shoes, we called them the rich people. You see, they said those rich kids, they were rich because they were putting on plastic shoes. It was not, these were not leather shoes, these were plastic shoes. So it is not correct to compare in terms of wealth. to compare a barefoot person to somebody wearing a plastic shoe. It's not right for us to start saying, oh, these Kenyans, they have a big economy. No, they just have a plastic shoe. So the only way we can therefore grow is for all of us to get together, put our resources together, be they natural resources, human resources, and then we can compete with the rest of the world. That is the reason for the East African community. That is why it is so important for us and for our generation. And the community has worked for everybody. I was looking at the figures, the 2012 figures for East African trade, exports, EAC exports to Kenya, about $855 million US dollars. Trade balance in the favor of Uganda. Ugandans exporting more here than what they are taking. Same thing for the United Republic of Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, and so on. Now, for Burundi, yes, even for Burundi, actually, 66 million exports and about 5.3 or so imports. Figures are small, but they're growing very fast. On the flip side, Kenya is now the biggest source of foreign direct investment for East Africa. Second largest in Tanzania, important sources of foreign direct investment in our countries. And the trade between our countries is qualitatively better. We are trading between us, we're trading manufactured products, not raw materials. With the rest of the world, we are doing raw materials. Among us, it's manufactured products. So we need to encourage this kind of intra-EAC trade. Let me end by saying that economic integration is important, but we have to raise our ambition to political integration. This is why work on a political federation is extremely critical for us. There are those who say, why federate? In fact, I've heard people say, how can you be looking for a political federation when we are doing devolution? I've heard the arguments here in Uganda. Now, devolution and political federation go hand in hand. They don't compete one against the other. Devolution is about empowering the people to make the decisions that affect them. That's what it means. Political federation is about getting the people together to aggregate all their interests into one big unifying force. And you do both at the same time. So the two go hand in hand. They don't compete one against the other. There are those who are worried that political federation will take away the flags, the ones we ride on our cars. And you know how hot this debate can be. Thou shalt not touch my flag. It can be a hot, interesting debate. No, but you can have political federation and keep the flags and keep. There are ways of doing it. In fact, political federation brings together our strengths. Simple example. How possible is it to fight terrorism alone as a country in East Africa? very difficult, a very tall order. But we can do it together. And if we do it together, then we have chances of success. When we go to international meetings, and some of our colleagues in the more developed world speak, the world listens. The world listens. But when we speak, first of all, we have no voice. We have to look for somebody to speak on our behalf. You know that. If you want to be heard, you have to look for somebody to speak on your behalf. They don't listen. And second, even when you speak, because you don't own the mouthpiece, it comes out as distorted. Completely distorted. And third, there are people who are out there whose job is to tell the rest of us how to live. You know it, don't you? Thou shalt live like this. And if you do this, they even tell you, if you do this, this is what will happen to you. If you do. Now, we Africans have to address this. It's a big challenge. You know, when the African Union was trying to address some of the issues and the challenges in Libya before late Gaddafi passed on, Africans could not even land in Libya itself. They could not, because our colleagues in Europe said, no, you can't land. You go back. Take back your plane. We are busy. We, the Europeans, are busy in Libya sorting out this thing. So, if you East Africans do not come together, one day somebody will come to you and say, you Kenyans, where do you want to go? Nairobi? Subiri kwanza. We'll take you to some other place. We are doing some things in Nairobi. We have to own Africa. We have to own East Africa. We have to own it now. You are the people who can do it. You, the young people, you have the energy, you have the intellect, if you have the desire to do so, you can do it. So, and then there are those who say, we will not have a political federation until you have a monetary union. We are going to have a monetary union. We now have a monetary union protocol. It's going to be ratified, hopefully by July. And there is a 10-year roadmap to a single currency. A lot of work has to be done, but we shall get there. There's no doubt in my mind that we shall get there. So do not be satisfied. My message to you is do not be satisfied only with economic integration. Let's invest in economic integration, but let's also work hard for political integration. Then indeed, if we do that, this will be East Africa's century. That's what I believe. That's what my colleagues and I from the Secretariat who are here work towards every day. We do not have all the answers and would like to hear your opinion on how you'd like this agenda to be driven and accelerated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Your Excellency. That was plenty to think about. I can't get out of my mind that we're smaller than Angola. And how many people are there in Angola? Like 20 million or something, isn't it? Yes. Yeah. But that shows us how far we can go, because we've got a long way to go. I'd like to now, when I was speaking outside with His Excellency, he said to me, Ali Khan, I've come to speak, but I've also come to listen. So I think this is a great opportunity for all of us who are East Africans to engage directly with the Secretary General and put our issues on the table and what are our key concerns and how we feel that the EAC can grow and be this wonderful institution that it is already. I was thinking to myself that the EAC is probably the most trusted institution, I think, in our region, in point of fact. I'd like to throw it open to any questions.
Thank you very much. I'm David. Thank you, Secretary General. It was a nice presentation that I've had. It's my third time I heard from you, and I'm always very encouraged to hear you talking about East Africa. You've said something that has really touched me about the national matters. Is it true that in East Africa we don't have we don't have negotiators in the national level? That's why you say that when you go to the international meetings, you are not heard. And if actually it's true, what is the take you are taking about it in that matter? Because that is a true reflection that in East Africa, we are supposed to do much about business. Thank you.
I'm Elizabeth Orembo from Internet Society. I volunteer for policy-making organizations both in Kenya and in Africa. Now, one thing I've observed in the policy-making process, especially in Africa, is that we are divided. One, there's the government and the civil society or the private sector, who only come together when they have some interest or some stake when it comes to policy making. Now, we find that in this international policy making, we find that the civil society have their own opinion, the government has their own opinion. Now, when you get to the global platform, we lose our identity. Maybe that's why we are not being heard, because we are not speaking as one. And that happens mainly because when this other group does their forum or even involves people, government doesn't participate. That's one observation I've gotten, especially on last year with the WIKIT and this internet policy with the Snowden saga. We still don't have a position to put there on the global platform on in such a point that you can be heard. Maybe we should get an opinion from you on that.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for the presentation. That was very nice. At least you've given us some insight. I was also shocked about the Angola thing. And I can't believe that the East Africa community is smaller than Angola as a country. While us Kenyans, we believe and we feel that we are the biggest economy around. So anyway, that's for another day. So my issue is, as we work for the political integration, what are the programs that you put in place to avoid a situation whereby we are having like the Mugabes of this country, of this African continent?
All right, so now, the question is why are we not heard? It's because we're a small economy. See, when China speaks, you listen. Even when you don't agree, you listen. When Japan speaks, you listen. So if you want to be heard, there is no shortcut. You have to grow your economy. That is, for me, that is the reason we are not heard. But we are also divided. So sometimes it's difficult for our interlocutors to know what we are saying because we are divided. We speak different voices. Those of you who read the Bible remember the Tower of Babel. You remember? People built a tower, and then they started speaking strange tongues to each other. Nobody could figure out what they were doing. So sometimes we don't speak, many times, we don't speak with one voice on an international issue, which is why it is important for us to come together and speak with one voice, not 54 voices. The question of civil society and government, I can only say that our treaty is very clear that the East African community is people-centered and private sector driven. So the people of East Africa are at the forefront of East African integration, which is why we now have a dialogue framework for the people of East Africa, including civil society, women's groups, youth groups, and I would encourage you to join. Those of you who are members of civil society, join this platform. We do meet about twice a year in what we call the East African Community Secretary General's Forum. The last forum was held here in Kenya. Please join and be part of driving this agenda. But I also think that civil society, first of all, civil society is critical to our development. But I think we need to reflect on how we do our work also. For example, I've always wondered why our governments don't fund civil society organizations. And you know, when we fund them, some organizations refuse funding from governments because they say in the control of the government. Not so. But you accept funding from the US, from Sweden, so if you can accept funding from other governments, and you're not, I don't think because you accept funding from other governments, you are there for working for those governments. Why wouldn't you also allow your governments to fund you so that the relationship is one of complementarity? So I think there is work that has to be done. It's a dialogue we need to continually have, about the role of government versus civil society. Now, why don't you allow me to ask my Director of Customs to tell you a little bit about the single customs territory for a minute, instead of answering about Mugabe. I think that would be a more useful discussion than a discussion around President Mugabe. Don't you think so? Very good.
I'm very encouraged to see the young ones, the youth, in this forum because they are the pillars of the integration. Now, there's been a lot of questions, and I don't know whether you have heard about this thing called the single customs territory. Have you heard about it? People have asked that what is a single customs territory and is it different from a customs union? Now, the EAC Customs Union, as displayed here, started in 2005. And the customs union was modeled in such a way that it would be progressive. You know, starting with things that can be done easily, then deepening into aspects that will enable complete free movement of goods within the community. This means that we are striving to achieve a borderless East Africa in as far as movement of goods are concerned, so that we dismantle the internal barriers and borders for purposes of allowing goods to circulate in the East Africa. This means that East Africa becomes like one entity, like one country, in as far as trading with the rest of the world is concerned, so that once goods come from outside, we treat them in a similar manner. We have same tariffs, same taxes, and similar policy and other regulatory measures on goods from outside. And also goods traded within are duty-free. They are not attracting any taxes when they cross borders. Now, the single customs territory is a culmination of the deepening process of the customs union. So, more or less, the two are not separate. It is just a progression into a deeper end of the customs union. Now, what are we doing? What we have done is that we have already finalized the policy process, and the policy documents that are supposed to guide the whole single customs territory is concerned are already in place and have been adopted by the summit. Now, what we are working on now are the processes, the modalities that will enable, but at the same time, initiatives have already begun because, you know, we moved away from this business of first finalizing, planning, which sometimes become endless, and we now doing planning and at the same time implementing. So they are moving on concurrently. What is being done, for example, in the Northern Corridor, already we are piloting, whereby goods, if they reach the first point of entry, for example, in Mombasa, and they are destined to an inland partner state, they are cleared there and then they move to the final destination for consumption. Instead of goods reaching Mombasa and they are cleared in Mombasa as transit, they reach Malaba, they are cleared as transit, they reach Katuna on the Uganda-Rwanda border, they are cleared as transit, and that is costly, the delays, and of course, the cost of doing business escalates. So what we have done now, once goods reach the port, the person in Kigali will declare the goods using electronic means, and Kigali after that pays taxes. Kigali notifies Mombasa that the goods have been cleared and you move. So that when you reach the border, you don't need to go to customs and start a fresh declaration. It is just confirmation. And eventually we don't even need, we want to reach a stage where there would no need of confirmation because everything will be monitored electronically on how they are moving. Likewise, exports, if they are moving from inland going outside, the same process. They are declared once instead of being declared in each partner state, and they move directly. What now we are, next week, we are beginning a pilot on the Central Corridor that starts from Dar es Salaam to Kigali and Dar es Salaam to Bujumbura on the same. On the trade, now intra-trade also, because of the taxes, internal taxes like VAT that we still collect, it was also much as there were no taxes on the customs duties on the goods. But once they reached the border, the process you go through in order to declare for the other taxes is the same as the process you go through when their taxes, import duties are on that good. So what we are already now started also the intra-trade piloting on goods that move between Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. We have started with Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. Tomorrow, actually on Tuesday, we'll be starting off with one product, cement, and once you are importing cement from Kenya, you just declare once at your place of consumption, and then that one will enable the goods to move. Rather than coming to Kenya, you declare an export, then you reach home, you declare an import, which is delays. What are the outcomes of this? Last month, Uganda has been doing it on fuel. The volume of fuel imports, because of the increased turnaround and reduced delays, increased by 38% in February. So you can imagine now the transporter is gaining because you move the truck which was taking, because we carried out a study, it was taking about 18 days to move from Mombasa to Kampala. Now it is taking 5 days. So you can imagine if you are doing 1 trip a month, now you can do 4, 5 trips or 6 trips. So the cost of moving, definitely, you know, economies of scale setting. When you move the goods from one place to the other, and if you are charging a certain fee because you are doing 1 trip, now if you are doing 7 trips, you can't charge the same amount for 1 trip. The economies of scale setting. So that fuel in Uganda, the target in terms of revenue target, there was a surplus of 19 billion shillings in February compared to February of last year. So that is the analysis we have done. And as we roll out the more pilots, we are going to analyze the other products. So in essence, what we are trying to do is to integrate all customs processes and bring on board all the other agencies that are involved, particularly like the bureaus of standards, like the SPS, like ministries of agriculture, livestock, who want to check some of these products, so that there is mutual recognition. If Kenya Bureau of Standards has checked the goods and cleared it, then that quality check that has been undertaken in Kenya should be recognized by the other bureaus of standards without going through the same process again, because that reduces the cost of doing business. Secretary General, I think I wanted to give that summary perspective of the single customs territory. It is not another stage of integration. It is still a customs union stage, but it is a consolidated level of customs, because customs union is subsumed in the common market, because common market expands the scope from only goods to other factors of production in terms of freedom of movement. And of course, with the monetary union now in place, it allows free movement of payments across the borders. For example, right now, what has happened, Kenya Ports Authority, you no longer need to go to KPA in the Mombasa to pay. You pay. They have now an office in Kampala and Bujumbura and Kigali. So for your goods, when you're clearing, you go and pay at the KPA offices for their charges. You do not need to move the other side. So all these things are becoming interlinked in order to enhance trade and reduce the cost of doing business, attract investment, and enhance competition within the East African community. I thank you.
Thank you very much for that intervention, which was very interesting, and particularly the science around the expansion in trade as we reduce our barriers. I'm getting one question which I would like the Secretary General to consider whilst I take the other questions from Twitter, and it's a lot of the folks saying, where does the Secretary General see opportunities for our young people in East Africa? If you were a careers advisor to Mindspeak today, what would you be telling everybody to be really focusing on? And where is Martin with the mic? Martin, are you going to take 2 questions from here? And he'll come up here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali. I think it was quite refreshing. My name is Maina Karayu. I'm a consultant in horticulture in Kenya. My question is as follows. We've talked about economic integration, political and monetary, and I think it's very interesting to see how the EAC is moving. But my main concern is food security. If we look at it, economic growth, and we cannot feed ourselves, will still be a challenge. And I think for me, it's something that the EAC Secretariat should actually treat with a lot of urgency if it's not being done, because it's quite embarrassing, to be honest. Like 2 months ago in Kenya, we're still having problems of food in some parts of Turkana. And this keeps on happening from time to time. And I believe that even based on some of the visits I've done in the West, these guys, they talk about everything else because they have been able to feed their people. But in Kenya, and I think in EAC, I think it's something that we really need to look and take it very seriously, so that when we have enough food, then we can look at the opportunities that will come. Secondly, it was refreshing to hear about the Kenyan economy being small. But what I was thinking myself is the positive side of the whole thing, that if it's small, together with the EAC, is going to grow, and I'm looking at the opportunities that will come from the growth to the thousands of us within the East Africa. There is going to be massive investments, massive opportunities. And I think that's something very positive to look at into in coming years. And finally, you see, I've been thinking, I was reading in the newspapers a couple of weeks ago, we are now importing maize from Uganda because we had a maize shortage. And I think from my background in the horticulture sector, you see, Kenya, for example, has been very successful, being one of the biggest exporters of fresh fruits and vegetables. Yet, when it comes to the food crops, we are not doing well. I'm not very sure where the disconnect is, but I think there's some work that needs to be done so we can get enough food and also quickly break down barriers between the different countries so we can supply each other with food. You find Uganda is having excess maize, Kenya doesn't have, Kenya is having excess, this Rwanda doesn't have, but I don't know what's happening with that so we can be able to break the barriers and feed ourselves. Thank you very much.
My name is Alex Njero from the Eastern Africa Policy Center. I have 2 short questions. One, I hope that the East Africa community acquiesces that corruption is one of the biggest impediments to intra-Eastern African trade. Does the Eastern African countries have a focused strategy to fight corruption in the region? And the other question is, how do you deal with countries that have membership in other regional economic bodies like SADC, like Tanzania, for example?
We'll take one more. Yeah.
My name is Paul, I'm an economist. And my question is in regards to tax justice. Africa loses about $1 trillion to corruption every year, annually. Now my question is, what is the East African community doing in terms of tax justice? And the second one is about foreign policy. What is the foreign policy of East Africa? Thank you.
Well, on some of these questions, if you have answers, you also give them. You're all East Africans. This is our community, so you might have answers that. Where are the opportunities for the youth? I think there are many opportunities in all sectors of our economy. From food to industry to creative arts to let me tell you what is exciting about East Africa for me, East Africa and the young people. A few years ago, we knew which careers we knew what to advise our people to do. You remember when somebody was bright, you'd say you'll become a doctor, you'll become an engineer, you'll become a lawyer, you'll become... And in fact, we shared out these professions. So we said Makerere will teach doctors, Nairobi was the hub of engineering, Dar es Salaam, law, and so on. There were few. These days, I am not quite sure what people do, but they make a lot of money. I keep telling my colleagues that one of the young people who used to work for me is a young lady who is doing very well. She went to study, did all her education, then came back, and I am told she takes people to dress in white. She convinces people to dress in white and bring their own food and cutlery and what. Then they pay her for. She's making a lot of money. They call it dîner en blanc. I don't know whether you people do it. I don't know whether it is here. It is there in Kigali. People go and buy white dresses, and so you spend buying white, then you buy your own cutlery and, I don't know, tablecloths and so on. Then they blindfold you and take you somewhere, and you pay for that. These fellows are making a lot of money. Just 6 months ago, I met a young group of people here in Kenya, who told me I was surprised that they are doing, they seem to be doing very well. People my age can sometimes be suspicious, so I asked them what they did for a living, and they told me they sell, they sell credit, airtime. They are based here somewhere, and they sell airtime credit, and their biggest clientele are actually Congolese and Angolans. So they're selling airtime to Congolese from Nairobi. So,
is that because it's a currency?
I don't know what they do. Apparently, if you run out of airtime, they give you some number, and then you can. I think they have an arrangement with these companies. If Safaricom were here, they would tell us how they do this. Then, so you call this number, you get airtime, and the next time you buy a scratch card, it deducts immediately. They get their money, you get your airtime to call into the talk radios. That's what people are doing now. So the point I'm trying to make is that the opportunities are immense for the young people of East Africa if they're all willing to look outside. I was talking to some of the oil companies that are doing exploration here. They're looking for drivers. Now, East Africans complain that they bring foreigners to drive. You've heard the complaint. Why are you bringing drivers? But this is specialized driving. These are trucks which you don't go to drive them just because you have a driver's license. Very specialized. So those of you who went to university and are willing to be drivers and to be trained, you can make some good money there. They're looking for welders, they're looking for tire mechanics. These things, I don't know whether you've seen them. The tires look like tanks, huge. So there is a whole industry there. If you took a look at the oil sector itself, that is open for careers, but you have to be willing to Now, for me, I'm not worried about official languages and how many official languages people have, except for the cost. But South Africa has how many? 27? About 27 official languages. A language is a medium of communication. French, English, Chinese. My only interest in languages are those languages which you can use to make money from. Don't speak languages which don't bring funds into your pocket. That's all. There are people who argue huge arguments about French and English. I say, no, look, what do you want? Whatever brings you shillings, speak that language, learn it. If it's Chinese, do so. But let's invest in our own Kiswahili, because you can make money with it, but you can also, it also cements our unity. So apart from Kiswahili and some of our national languages which we need to protect, any other language, if I was to give you advice, just look for that language that will bring you more money into your pockets and invest in it. Youth involvement. Yes, I've taken note. As I said, we have a forum that also includes the youth. We now have youth ambassadors, and there are quite a number in the universities. I think you can find out who these youth ambassadors are. They're there at the University of Nairobi, Kenyatta University. We have a number of youth ambassadors. So we are willing to work with you, the youth. Just organize. I've been encouraging the youth to organize themselves. Just don't agonize, just organize. Because sometimes when we reach out to one youth group, you can't believe the number of letters I receive of complaints. Why, Secretary General, why did you work with that youth group? Don't you know them? This is what they don't do right. But don't you know us? This is what we do. So can you, the young people, also find a way of organizing yourselves to ease this dialogue and to make your participation better? That's the only challenge that I would like to throw back to you. And finally, my Esther talks about the fears that any country will bring down the community. I think there are two cures to that. The first one is for you, the people of East Africa, to own this community. Own it. How do you own it? You are voters. You are all voters. Why would you vote for a party, a political party, which does not have East African integration into their manifesto? Ask them. Say, you want to be my MP? What is your commitment to the East African community? So ask your political leaders. Read their manifestos. And if you have political parties that are not for East African integration, don't vote for them. That is one. So owning for the people of East Africa. The second one, the second cure for that is what is contained in our treaty. The treaty says that the East African community is a body corporate. Unlike the earlier community, which was a body made up of the three partner states, and when they pulled out, when one country pulled out, then the thing collapsed. This new community is a body corporate. It has its own independent legal personality. So a country can leave it or a country can be expelled from the community without affecting the community itself. The community continues with the presence or absence of one or its members. So that is contained in our treaty, and this gives confidence that the unfortunate event of 1977 will not happen. And those in the sophisticated areas of our economy, and we need to continue investing in them, not depend on oil and gas, even when it comes on board. I think that's an important point. You also make a very critical point, which I agree with, that the markets are changing. And therefore, for me, the biggest market for our oil and gas is Africa. It's not in the future, it is Africa. Why is it Africa? Because that is where the potential for growth is. We have, if you look, for example, at electricity consumption per capita on our continent, in East Africa alone, it's pathetic. Huh? It is pathetic. We have total electricity generation now is less than 10,000 megawatts. Now, we need over 40,000 just to keep up with our growth. And much more than that if we are to grow our economy. And what I'm saying about East Africa is the same for the rest of Africa. So the biggest market, I think, for our oil and gas and this industry is going to be Africa. And the earlier we invest in integration, the better for us as Africans. Yes, the other markets will continue to be important, but I think you raise an important issue, that it has to be investment in Africa's market. Deborah says we shouldn't rush. You know, I think we have no choice but to rush. On this I will disagree. Because where we have to go, the gap between our aspirations and where we are today requires that we move fast. Maybe not rush, I agree. We don't rush, but we have to move extremely fast. The world is moving, and we have to catch up on one hand and compete while catching up on the other. So I think there is a sense of urgency to everything that we have to do. We cannot afford 50, 60 years. No. I think we need to do everything and do it right, but with a sense of urgency because of the nature of the challenges we face. The issue about manufacturing, absolutely right. Manufacturing contributes to less than 10%, about 10% of our GDP. That's its contribution. This is not sustainable. And our industrialization policy has targets of at least 40%. We are working with the manufacturers to see what are the policy issues that may be hampering manufacturing, in addition to the other areas we know, energy, infrastructure, and small markets and so on. So those East Africa is trying to address, but we're also discussing with them to see if there are any other policy issues that hinder manufacturing. We are working again with some partners, many of whom are here, around priority value chains, the agro-processing, the pharmaceuticals, and so on and so forth. So I agree with you.
Now, my question is about the coalition. We announced that we created a bit of a hula hoop, but it seemed to have cooled down because of our presidency in Kampala last week, I think so. So, my question is, do you think there is trust between the member countries when on the other side we're hosting 2-3 countries that are willing to go ahead with other projects, leaving aside the other two? And from that, the last one I think is about Tanzania. There has been various comments, suggestions that Tanzania has been trying. It is neither joining EAC fully, it is looking aside to see whether SADC is appropriate. I'd like to know more about that. Thank you.
My name is Kenneth. I am policy analyst with government issues, and I am blog and agnostic. My question is to Dr. Sezibera. Congratulations, first of all. Your tenure thus far has generated a lot of progress with regards to EAC trade. My question, however, is, don't you think we should do an audit of the common market protocol, first of all, and see whatever it is that we have gained, instead of spreading ourselves too thin and doing too many things, yet achieving very talking about going into the monetary union, talking about the political federation, spreading our resources and our thinking and our psyche to all those when we haven't actually tightened the gains on the common market. Because 1 day or 2 years later, if you're not in office and nobody else is there and the psych, reduces, probably we might lose whatever we have made with regards to the common market. So I'm asking you whether it is important or you think it would be important to audit the gains you have made on the common market and then say we have done this and tighten that before we move into other data things. Thank you.
I'd like to know what EAC is doing to be able to ensure countries are actually in a position to attract foreign direct investment. And also in regards to Dr. cohesion and Japanese economy, his research shows that in East Africa community, the foreign direct investment is not being as effective as it should. So is there a certain mechanism that it's coming up already to measure this? And also in East African community, there's a huge gap between the poor and the rich despite the growth per capita. So for instance, like in countries like comparing India and China, we find that the GDP has grown very much. But when we look at a country like India, we find there's a huge gap between the rich and the poor. So is that something that is being done in Australia? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Monica Sezibera. I'm particularly interested in the integration of the monetary union because I think at the moment some of the challenges are the countries moving at different paces. So I'd like to know what you consider the challenges of integrating the monetary union.
My question is, which countries are considered candidates of joining the East African community? And the second question I want to ask, if the East African community is to expand in terms of growing other countries, is the East African community a more ideal coalition, or is it just a geographical coalition? Countries like South Sudan is very big. Countries like South Sudan, Somalia, and the rest. Can these countries join the East African community? Yes, I think, because I'm paying $50 each time I want to cross this country. And I don't want to lose. Because the other guys will just, okay, are you from the East African community? Pass. And when it comes to my hand, I have to give my hands into my pocket and get pay $50 for each. So will South Sudan join the East African community? Is there anything going on?
Mistrust. You know, the integration has its challenges, its ups and downs. So not all countries agree on everything all the time. And that is normal. I think they are agreeing more now than they did in the past. And as we integrate even more, they will agree even more. So it's a normal phenomenon. I think it was blown out of proportion in some ways. I don't know, I never talk about the coalition of the willing. You created this thing. The media created it, baptized it. These countries never said they were a coalition of the willing. You even now you call them cows. And you huh? COW, cows, what? No. What these three countries are doing is implementing programs already agreed at the East African Community level along the Northern Corridor. And the Northern Corridor countries, you know them. They are Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and now South Sudan because of LAPSET and some other issues. What is happening on the Northern Corridor is quick implementation, but a lot of work has also been undertaken on the Central Corridor. So for example, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi are working together on the rail from Dar es Salaam to Kigali, eventually to Keza Msongati in Burundi. They even have a secretariat. The three of them have a secretariat along this corridor. So this is allowed in our treaty, and we encourage it. I was very happy to come into Kenya today with my identity card. Now I don't carry my passport. I was happy to do this with my ID. Other countries, I hope, will join quickly. So what happened was that there was lack of communication between countries, and there are some other associated issues which we managed to resolve last year. But this is a normal process. It has nothing to do with those who are willing and those who are not willing, no. Tanzania is a member of the EAC, is an active member of the EAC. We have just concluded what we call a common market scorecard, which we launched. And the common market scorecard was looking at where we are and the challenges we still have. Now, what was interesting about this common market scorecard, there are many things interesting, but one of the interesting facts is that the finding was that Tanzania was slower in removing the barriers to implementation of the common market protocol. But they did not, but Kenya was fastest in reintroducing. So Kenya was fast in removing them, but also very quick to reintroduce. Just as an example. Meaning that yes, Tanzania may be slow in removing some things, but once they do, then it's done. They are slower because of these countries move at different speeds. It takes longer to pass legislation. There are many more stages. Once they do, it's done. So I would say that the common market, the scorecard shows us where all countries are deficient, and a number of them are deficient in many areas. But Tanzania is a member of the EAC. From the president to everybody, they've made this commitment, and we see it on the ground. The issues notwithstanding. Kenneth, I think I've answered your question. The audit of the common market. We are doing an audit of the common market. The common market protocol scorecard is one such a thing. But we are also doing, we have a common market monitoring framework which is online, it's available, and we do update this every 6 months. Now the heads of state receive an update on what issues have not been implemented, what are the outstanding issues. They have decided to receive this from the Council of Ministers every 6 months and to hold each other accountable for implementation, which is good. So this is happening. But I wish to address your point of saying let's concentrate on the common market only before we move into other areas. No, it cannot work. I'll give you an example. How can you fully implement the common market unless you integrate the financial systems? You cannot do that. For a common market to be fully functional, the financial systems need to be integrated so that payments become easy, so that movement of people with their pensions and other benefits become easy, so that the rights of residents make sense. You have to have an integrated financial system. And once you get into integrated financial systems, inevitably, you have to coordinate your monetary policy. So, although theoretically we talk about a common market and then a monetary union as different stages, they tie very closely into one another. It's like building a house. You cannot say, I'm now going to concentrate on the foundation only. No, as you do the foundation, you have to make plans for plumbing, for electricity, for roofing. So, yes, you build a house in stages, but theoretically, but in practice, you do many things at the same time. And this is what we have to do for East African integration. FDI flows are still not as high as we'd like them to be, that's correct. And in fact, some of the reforms have not brought in as much FDI as one would expect. Which is why it is important. The point I made about Kenya being a source of FDI was a deliberate point. That the source of FDI will have to come from Africans themselves, in my opinion. And we have enough resources now to do this as Africans. The others will also join us, but I think we have resources to do this with our diaspora, with our own internal resources, and that's where we need to invest. There are inequalities in East Africa, and I fully agree with you that the big agenda next, the next frontier, the way I see it, has to be growth with equity. Especially if we become a fossil economy, if we become an oil and gas economy, we'll have to really take a look at this. So you're absolutely right. This has to be this agenda. It also has to be, but the inequity, there's also a gender inequity, which is important for us to consider. When we talk about Africa as being the next frontier, the emerging market, for me, I think we're talking about Africa's women being the emerging market. It's not so much the men. I think the men, to a certain extent, they're also a good market. But I think the emerging market are East Africa's women. And therefore, the gender inequities, this debate about gender equality is not a social debate, in my opinion. It's an economic debate. And for women of East Africa to play their role and get the benefits they deserve is not a favor, because the statistics show us that they are the producers, they are the market, and with education they're going to be the consumers. They already are the consumers, but they're going to be an increasing consumer group. And therefore, any country that does not have a deliberate gender equity program will miss out on the economic growth that we expect for Africa. So it is both a right, but it is a strategic imperative for us to invest in gender equity. So those are just to say that I fully agree with you that inequalities we must deal with. But now the debate is good. What we would not like to see is the debate we used to have in the past of people concentrating on sharing a non-existent cake. So you have no cake, but you are fighting to share it. No, this way is for East Africa. We are saying, let this be private sector driven. Let's create wealth first. It's number one. And then find some mechanisms of distribution of this wealth. But don't get into a fight of sharing cakes which are non-existent. I think Monica asked about the challenges of a monetary union. She's from the central bank. She can, I think maybe I can learn from her also. Just to say that the monetary policy integration in East Africa has gone very well. In fact, the Monetary Affairs Committee, composed of governors of the central banks, are in many ways ahead of the rest of their colleagues in East Africa. That's why last year they launched the East African payment system. They've integrated cross-border payments. They are doing real-time gross settlements. So they've really advanced in terms of monetary policy. The challenge is integration of fiscal policy, fiscal space, the ministers of finance, issues of debt, of borrowing, and so on and so forth, which is what we are trying to address through the Monetary Union Protocol. That's where the challenge will be, fiscal integration. Candidates for EAC, Sudan has applied, South Sudan has applied to join. We have verified, we sent a verification team. They made their report. We were supposed to begin negotiations on the terms of their accession into the community in January. But as you know, South Sudan experienced political difficulties beginning of December, and this program has been put on hold for now until we agree with the government of South Sudan when this can continue. Somalia has applied. We have not yet verified them. We will send a verification team, and then depending on that, the result of that verification, we will make up our minds whether to go for negotiations or something, or if something else needs to be done.
So just to go back to how big can the EAC, in your mind, become? Eastern DRC, they have the same language as us. South Sudan, you're talking about. I mean, do you see it as being geographically, potentially much, much bigger?
Well, I think it has a natural limit. You see, the East African community has as its ultimate aim a political federation. And that imposes, if you will, an ideological limit to expansion. So it's not an endless expansion because there is an ideological limit to that expansion for now. However, in terms of economic growth, yes, the community can grow and have very major relationships with economies across the continent. We see ourselves as a building block for the African Union and an important building block for the African Union's continental free trade area. So in terms of full integration and EAC growth, yes, there is an ideological limitation because of the political federation determination, but growth along economic terms can continue with our other neighbors.
Now, I promise to go over here. Yes.
Hi, thanks a lot. My name is Ndiamui. I'm a software developer in Kenya. So my question is, technology plays a major role in taking this agenda forward. However, you find that most of the technology systems and software are purchased or sourced from abroad. So the question is, how do you empower small African companies to take opportunity of this technology? And are you as a community sourcing for software in East Africa? And what are you doing in terms of technology?
My name is Javan Pamba. The question I wanted to ask, your theory on the assumption of the world map is based on the mass of Africa where you can fit EU, India, and Mexico, and America. But it's not also, but there's also another factor which you have not based on. China has 1.2 billion people. India also has 1.2 billion. European Union has 500 million. Mexico has over 100 million. Yet Africa, we're 1.2 billion, which simply says that landmass does not play a big factor in economic growth. And the other question is, as we're forming the EAC community and you're saying we're moving to an oil and gas economy, are you also realistic to what's happening out there? Like where in Mexico they have huge oil reserves and they're reforming their industry to privatize it. And also in America where there is hydraulic fracturing, where it has reduced even their demand for import of oil, where even they don't import so much from Nigeria. And also because of what Putin has done, Europe might decide if we want to go to energy independence, we might just start accelerate the move towards hydraulic fracturing, where Australia has lots of shale reserves and UK also has, and France also has. Are you also alive to that factor which might affect the prices of oil and gas in the future?
Yes. Hi. Good morning. Good morning, Doctor. My name is Deborah. I really don't have questions, just a few comments. First and foremost, when you're doing policy integration for East African community, please do not rush it. I love Kenya, it's my country, I was born here. I would not live anywhere else. But for example, how they did, our constitution, and up to today, implementation is still giving them a problem. Like a gentleman over there said that do it, swiftly. So even if there's a change of office, there's no, ABCD. Yeah. My second comment is on this map. I'm very, very impressed. I'm very, very impressed. I'm an entrepreneur, and when I started, you have a global mindset, but then when you start working, you start realizing that Africa has so much potential and there's so much work we need to do here before you even think of taking our product out there. We really need to conquer our own markets. So for the numbers, what I usually studied with these countries is that they have really huge population numbers, and the integration will be good because if Kenya is 40 million, if Tanzania is, how many million is Tanzania? and Uganda. It's good for business. I mean, if I'm supplying these 3 and I don't have a lot of trade, you know, it's good for business and it's good for growth also, because United States of America has all these states, but every state is independent. It's just like our countries, but you know, you're doing your own business, but you're doing it together. There is ease of access. And then my third comment is to us young people here. I would like to see less middlemen, less brokers, and more manufacturers, more industries grown here, so that, you know, we can actually even grow our own economies from here. Examples are, you know, coffee. We grow coffee here, we have to export it and bring it back as Nescafe. You know, it's manufactured outside there. Also, EPZ, they make things for Woolworth, for Gap. You know, it is sold in the UK, and then when it's brought back to us, it's still at a high price. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ogundo. I'm a retired banker. I have 2 very brief questions. One, the community anthem that we sang here was in Swahili. Is there an English version, or does the one be adopted wherever? Then my second question, in this region, we have different official languages. In Kenya, we communicate in English. In Tanzania, Swahili. I believe Burundi is French. Rwanda, I believe, recently adopted English. How do we intend to harmonize so that when we become a real East African community, even in languages, wherever we are, we shall be speaking one language? Thank you.
I'm Dickens Menya from Nairobi University. I had 2 questions. One of my learned friend talked about involving the youth in making the policy of East African community. I'm really concerned about that because we as the youths, and mostly the students, we have a lot of ideas and a lot that can help. And I was thinking that if it can work for us to be involved in making the policies and also in making some of the integrations, it can be great help. Then the second thing was our bit concern is that we have some organizations around based on youths. We are coming up with a lot of activities to ensuring that we move forward in terms of technology and in terms of economic development. But there are a lot of struggles within ourselves that make us even to lose hope and develop some negative attitude towards our projects. And this is one of the platforms that are taking an opportunity to make you aware that there exists and this need for this team to come up strongly and support. We have indulged the government a bit, trying to work with the government, but failures are also there. The government is always very much timid and adamant in terms of their decisions. And in case there is that chance that you can provide to help, please, we are really appreciating for your movement. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Esther Kadaga. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this opportunity of coming and talking to young people like us. It's such a privilege. We don't take it for granted. I'm a student in the University of Nairobi. I specialize in marketing, Bachelor of Commerce. Just like any other, just like a partnership, there's a point where something happens, there's a disintegration, or maybe there's a pull down. So I was asking, what will happen to EAC if at all any country decides to pull down? Or what, I know it's an effort for each and every country to participate. But what do you do to make it not happen? Or what do you do to make them all pull up, come up together and be as one and form EAC? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. On the issue of technology, we, at the EAC level, in addition to what partner states are doing, but at the EAC level, we've now formed a Science and Technology Commission, which is headquartered in Kigali. And the idea being to indeed promote technology, science and technology within our region. There's a lot of work that is ongoing in this field. Do we buy software as a community from the region? Yes, we do. We are actually installing a budget management software developed by the University of Dar es Salaam. So we've sourced this from the University of Dar es Salaam, and it's a project that is supported by some of our partners, Trademark East Africa, and I see Frank Mustard here, right in the audience. So yes, we do source software. But do propose solutions to us. We're also open to proposals from all of you who are involved in this technology. It is a sector that is critical for our growth. Then Java was talking about this map that you see there. Don't read too much into that map. That map is there to make one simple point, that we have 54 fragmented economies and therefore not making an impact on world trade, and we need to integrate. That is the only point that you should read into that map. You are right, I could have done a population map, it would look different. I could also have done a Google map, Google penetration map, and it would have looked totally different from this. I was looking at the Twitter, have just produced a Twitter, I don't know what they've called it, tweet map, tweet something. With a volume of tweets, yeah. And you know the world for them looks different. So the world looks different depending on where you stand. For me, that is what it looks like, because of where I stand and because of the challenges we have to address. But you make an important point. On population, you're absolutely right. The part of the reason we are coming together is because we need, and I think the issue was raised, when we are together, we are about 135 million people. That is the beginnings of a good market. 135 million is much better than 42. And if you educate that population, then much better. If you have 1.2 billion people on the African continent and you integrate that market, then it becomes a very important force for development. On a lighter note, I'm always struck that we are 135 million people, and I think East Africa has, the latest figures show us that we have about 135 million chickens also. So one chicken per East African. So population is important. Oil and gas present an opportunity, but our region has been growing very fast, being a non-oil and gas economy. That's the difference between our growth and the growth of some of our neighbors on the continent. And it's a good thing. So our drivers of growth have been in services, including financial services, have been in tourism, have been...
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. That was a wonderfully interesting, interactive conversation, and I think it's also a great signal through the noise of how progressive the EAC under your leadership has been, and long may it last, and we wish you every success And I hope all of us, if you have an opportunity to just wait a few minutes, I don't know what your schedule is like, so if anybody can meet and greet you, I would be deeply grateful. Once again, thank you. Thank you.